This module is about the big picture of modeling and simulation. We're going to start with a definition, and we're going to work our way through something called the modeling and simulation body of knowledge as a community-developed definition of what it is that we do. Well, the first thing you're probably asking yourself is, why are we asking this now? I mean, this is the end of your program, not the beginning of your program, so shouldn't we have been asking this at the beginning? Well, I can only answer that by saying that I certainly hope we asked it at the beginning, but we're asking it at the end because our purpose right now is to try and tie all these little parts together that you've learned about into something bigger that we call modeling and simulation. See how those parts fit together, how they relate, how we need to know different things to perform different functions inside of modeling and simulation. So that's our purpose in this module. So let's start with some simple definitions. First of all, a system. A system is a set of connected things or parts forming a complex whole. So some examples of those would be people, groups of people, sensors, aircraft. You can probably already see where I'm going with this because these are exactly the sorts of things that we like to model. So what's a model? A model is a simplified representation of a system intended to promote insight, understanding of the real system. The key word here, of course, is simplified. We very rarely, if ever, will model something in anywhere near what we would call full fidelity. That is, the same fidelity that this thing would exist in the real world. So one of the questions that we are always grappling with in modeling and simulation is, how simplified is it? This actually gets to the VV&A, or the verification and validation problem of how do we know that the thing that we're modeling actually represents the piece of reality that we need in order to promote insight and understanding of a real system. That's one of our conundrums in modeling and simulation. And then lastly, is simulation itself is the manipulation of these models in space and time. And of course, it requires context and interaction among models is going to be one of the key facets. So we're going to use this document called the Modeling and Simulation Body of Knowledge, which we've made available to you in its entirety, as our example of our definition of what modeling and simulation actually is. And you can sort of tell from the size of the document how deep of a definition that really is. It's very deep and very detailed. This was published in 2008 after many years of work, and this was really a community-built effort. It's very specific to defense modeling and simulation. So if you were interested in modeling and simulation, let's say for the pharmaceutical industry or something like that, you are certainly going to find a lot of things in this document that apply, but you're also going to find a lot of other things that don't. So it's very specific to defense modeling and simulation. So for example, one of the things that we do a lot in defense modeling and simulation that many other industries don't even consider part of it is training. Training is a huge part of modeling and simulation in the defense industry, and in some industries it's not a part of it at all. So for that reason, training is a very big part of the MSBOK, and you'll see it in a lot of detail, a lot of granularity. There was a lot of input from across all of the Department of Defense. This was really a community-built document. It took many years to put it together. We in the MOVES Institute had a lot of input, but so did the other universities, government labs, industry. Everybody had some say in this. It really was a community effort. So it's mapped to awareness level, and that's really important because you kind of need to know not just what are all the things that fit inside of defense modeling and simulation, but how many of them do I just sort of need to know they're there? How many of them do I have to master? Where do I fit inside of this? And it's not the same for everybody. So it might be different by service. It might be different by knowledge area. So are we talking about training, acquisition, test and evaluation? What are we talking about? And then job type. So think about what an engineer needs to know versus what management needs to know. They need to know probably the same topics, but at very different levels. So this is just a snapshot of what you'll find inside of the document, and I encourage everybody to crack it open and look at it in some detail. This is an example of just mapping out the knowledge areas. So here we're talking about different model types, process models, combination models, with a reasonable description of what we mean by these things. And this is a more detailed chart talking about awareness level for a number of components. And you'll notice that across the table there are the services and the knowledge areas. And this is very typical all the way through the entire document, where there's just rating scales. These are rating scales where lots of people had some input into these things. So real quick, we're just going to go through some very high-level key knowledge areas that are inside of the document. So for example, modeling concepts, so types of models and their representations, the building of models, so the process of building them, live, virtual, constructive, discrete event versus continuous, all those sorts of things. Then management, so strategic planning, requirements, procurements, contracts. You're going to see a lot of these topics in this course are going to come up. Then development processes, so system integration, system architecture, all those sorts of things. VV&A is going to be a topic that we're interested in. Then, of course, there's the foundation of mathematics, computer science topics, and certainly interoperability issues as they apply to modeling and simulation. And many of these topics are going to come up in a variety of different places throughout this course, but we wanted to just do a very quick module on defining what modeling and simulation is. So first of all, that we're all on the same sheet of music before we even get started. Second of all, you can really see where everything that you've learned kind of fits in some context, and it also kind of drives, in some sense, the syllabus for a capstone course and all the things that we want to touch on to try and tie some things together so we have a more coherent view of what modeling and simulation is before we finish.